Hello 5e, welcome to your flip video for science this week, which is all about the water cycle and evaporation and condensation. You'll see in front of you some facts I've found out about water. Some of them I found quite surprising, especially the last two, which I didn't know before. Have a read of those. Feel free to pause this video if you need a bit longer to look at things. You're going to be expected to know this for the lesson. So the water cycle, here it is. You've probably seen a picture of this before. It's also called the hydrologic cycle. Hydro is a prefix meaning water. And there you can see the words that you're going to need: evaporation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation, and the different types of runoff. And you should know for our lesson how to draw one of those hydrologic cycles and what all those words mean. And this video will help teach you that. So the first one is evaporation. Evaporation, as we've learned in class, happens, so you see it in warm water with a puddle evaporating. It requires energy to take place, and that energy could come from the sun, the atmosphere, even movement of the earth. We usually see it with temperature from the sun. But we also see it on our bodies when we sweat. We get sweat and that evaporates off. Our body actually releases heat to evaporate the sweat on our bodies, thus cooling us down. And once that's evaporation, but water vapors also released into the atmosphere through something called transpiration. And there's a great picture. I wonder if you know what that is a picture of. You can pause this video and think about that. But it is actually something called stomata, or tiny holes which you can find underneath a leaf. And water is evaporated through those tiny holes. Water comes up from the soil, through the roots of the plant, and is evaporated through those stomata. Now, the amount of transpiration depends upon the humidity of the atmosphere and also how wet the soil is. So we don't get an awful lot here in the Middle East because the soil's very dry. But if you imagine all the leaves in the world all doing this all the time, that's quite a lot of transpiration. Anyway, once the water has been turned into water vapor through evaporation and transpiration, it then goes up in the air and it condenses back into water droplets. Now this takes place because the air temperature drops, and as air temperature drops, it actually gets colder than the dew point temperature. Now, dew point temperature is the temperature where water forms back into droplets, and colder air cannot actually carry as much water vapor as warmer air. So what happens is the air gets cooler, the dew point is reached, and the water vapor turns into water droplets. Now, you don't need to know that much detail for year 5. You just need to know that condensation is water vapor turning back into water droplets. Interestingly enough, fog, I think someone asked about this in class, fog is where the air and the dew point temperatures are actually the same, and if that happens near to the ground, you get fog, and it's very difficult to drive your car, etc. So condensation then is water vapor turning back into water droplets. Now, actually, when that happens, what I found out was because water vapor has energy in it, but it's not as it has more energy in it than when it actually condenses back into liquid water. And so that excess energy has to go somewhere, which is why we get storms. And in its extreme case, you can get hurricanes. So hurricanes are formed by water vapor rapidly condensing and releasing its energy. And that energy has to go somewhere, and it goes into a hurricane. Now, once it's condensed into water droplets, often it needs actually as well to have some kind of dust. The water droplets need to have something in the middle, dust or a bit of sand. But once that happens, they get heavier and heavier until gravity pulls them back down to Earth, and they fall as rain, snow if it's cold, hail if it's very stormy. And the process, you usually get hail with big storms because the process happens so quickly and the ice doesn't have a chance to melt on its way down. And if you're very unlucky, instead of snow, you'll get sleet, which is a mixture of rain and snow and is slushy and not nearly as fun as snow itself. So those are the 4 types of precipitation. You need to know all those. You need to know precipitation. You need to know the 4 types. And then, once the water droplets have landed back on Earth, if they've landed into the sea or ocean, and that's fine. But, and you see my spelling mistake, I just put the spelling mistake there. That's not good enough, is it? Excessive precipitation, honestly. What happens is the ground gets saturated. There's been a lot of rain. The ground can't hold all the rain, so it runs off the ground into rivers, then into the sea. It might run off into a lake, where it then evaporates because lakes aren't connected to the seas or oceans. It might possibly percolate into the ground, and then plants will actually use that water, and it will be transpired through its leaves, through its stomata, back into the atmosphere. And also we get runoff from snow melting when the temperature gets warmer, and the snow will melt and it will run off into the rivers. So there's all your processes. We've talked through them fairly quickly, and of course you can go back and have another look at this video and pause it. And this is happening all the time, and you need to be able to draw that diagram, and you need to know what those 4 words mean with examples if you can. You don't need to know about how hurricanes form, even though it is interesting. And finally, you've got to learn all that, and then when you come into class, you'll be an expert on the hydrologic cycle, and you will need to have an empty box. A shoebox or a cereal box would be perfect. Okay, if you've got more than one, bring in more than one because someone's bound to forget. And we're going to do something really fun about the water cycle, otherwise known as the hydrologic cycle. We're going to do something really fun in class. Thanks very much. I'm looking forward to it.